What do we got next? Are we live yet?
I believe we are.
Are we? Okay. So this is what we're talking about. I was reading a story. This is I'm pretty sure this is on APTN. On June 1st, well, not on June 1st, on October 29th, 2016, 15-year-old Kanina Sue Turtle, actually in Sioux Lookout, Ontario, she committed suicide. 15-year-old girl. She committed suicide in a foster home run by Ontario agency Tikanagan Child and Family Services, which is unfortunately not unusual for a lot of our children in care. What was unusual about this was she filmed her suicide on an iPod in a 1-hour-long video, which even caught her being found by one of her caregivers. So you could take a look at that. You can find that video. What her mother's doing right now, this is the thing about it, is her mother's doing a 300-kilometer walk to this government-owned home to visit the bedroom where it happened. And she's visiting this bedroom for the first time. She's never actually been in this house. She's doing it to raise suicide awareness, but specifically to do a focus on children in care. And that's a huge problem. We talked about this last week. We talked about the 60s scoop and the millennium scoop that's happening right now, which is basically our First Nations children being taken away from their parents and put into the care of another family, and typically they're white middle-class families or their foster homes. And a lot of these children, they end up lost in the system, not knowing their family, their friends, or not knowing their parents. And once they're done and spit out of the system when they're 18 years old, the kids have no connection to home. And this poor girl is, like I said, it's not unusual. She committed suicide while she was in care. Do you have anything to say about that, Morty?
Several years ago, there was a farmer out in Raymond who would take foster care kids into his place, and he made them stay in the basement, and they weren't paid anything. They lived on mattresses. He made them stay in the basement. A lot of them were Indigenous kids.
Right.
And so I think he was taking 8 at a time. And he's an upstanding member of the community. He's a foster parent. Nobody thinks otherwise of him, but he was more or less using those kids for slave labor to work his farm. And on top of that, he was getting something like $700 per head for every month for every foster kid that he put in.
Right.
So on the flip side, I think there is something to be said that right now in the child welfare system in Canada, there are more children in care than ever were in residential schools.
Really?
So what it seemingly looks like is that the child welfare system is not there to actually really help these kids, but because of this moralistic and racist stance that they think they could raise our children better, and perhaps even there is a subtle, it sounds conspiracy theory, but there definitely are people who believe this, that it's a method of assimilation, so that they take them out of the home, they're not being raised in Indigenous communities, and then they'll be just like every other Canadian. On the flip side of it though, one of my pals she was in foster care, and she, as soon as she turned 18 and she wasn't of any use to the foster family for money, for income, they just threw her out and that's it. No, I love you, no, I hug you. Nothing like that. They just abandoned her. And that is a common reality for these kids when they turn 18 and they're no longer a source of income for the people out there. That being said, there are good people out there who are taking care of foster kids.
Yeah.
And we can't forget that.
Right.
So it is a very complicated issue, but it also looks like another means of assimilation and means of oppression for Indigenous children.
Right. So what about this poor girl who kills herself on an iPod and films it? Her mom's taking a walk. I can't imagine her mother walking into this bedroom. Like, what is she? I don't know if she's already done. I think she's already gotten there because this story is from June 1st. It's been about 5 days.
I can't imagine the kind of pain that she's going through. And it's a really, like, I don't really have thoughts to put to this. Like, it hurts me to know about that.
Right.
And I have no horse in the game, but it hurts me to know about that. So just imagining what the people who are close to her, who the people she is of, is
that's Kanina Sue Turtle. She was living in Sioux Lookout, Ontario. That was a couple years ago. October 29th. That's a tough time for me too. My sister actually killed herself in 2006, right around the same time. 10 years prior to that, to Kanina Sue. So that's why it's a real tough issue for me myself. Dealing with suicide, but kids in care too. You know, the social workers and all the people out there need to understand that the children need to be with their families. They need to be with their parents, and I truly believe that the only people that could raise children are their parents. That's just my personal opinion, though. Well, let's move on to another story before the well starts flowing out of my face. Right here. Okay. Here's one. Now, this is from June 4th, a couple days ago, from the Key First Nation. A convicted drug trafficker is running for chief of Key First Nation. This is in East Central Saskatchewan. Now the thing about him was he already was voted chief before, and then last year he got busted and he was convicted and thrown in jail for dealing codeine. It was codeine for the purpose of trafficking, and he was thrown in jail. Now they had an election recently in the Key First Nation, and a judge. There's a lot of complaints. Okay, I'll just read it to you. Okay, a judge ordered a new election after the last one was corrupted by vote buying. So Clarence Papaquash, the guy we're talking about, he was released in December, convicted of possessing and trafficking codeine last year, says, "I don't think it's an issue." He said, "I paid my dues to society and I'm a free man." Now, INAC, Indigenous, what's INAC again?
Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada.
Yeah, it's the new...
I think they change the name every few years to hide the paper trail.
It's the new Indian, Indian Affairs.
It's Indian Affairs, but they change the name every few years, and I think to hide documentation so you don't get the full thing.
Act like it's a whole new,
it's filed somewhere else.
Anyways,
I think that's why they changed it.
INAC stated that the First Nations Election Act says that having a criminal record, even outstanding charges, cannot prevent anyone from running for chief and council. How about that? All you dealers out there on the Blood Reserve. Even if you have charges, outstanding warrants, you could still run for chief and council. That's part of the First Nations Elections Act. So this guy is Papaquash from the Key First Nation. He's not wrong. And he's actually one of the people that brought up the issue of vote buying on the Key First Nation. And this judge ordered a brand new election. So now this convicted drug trafficker / former chief is running for chief again, and there's actually a very good chance that he could get back in. Who knows, right? The dealers are the most popular guys on the res usually.
That's really dark.
Nah, I'm just kidding. No, that was me. Sorry.
Well, you're not wrong.
Sorry, real politicians. You guys ain't that crooked, right? All right, we're gonna move on. June 4th. Okay, now this is a hot topic issue in Calgary right now. It's actually made national news. It's taken it a while. So 11-year-old Blackfoot boy named, I'm going to say this wrong, I'm sorry, Rafi Vadnais. Vadnais. He had part of his braid cut off. He's in middle school. He was walking down the hallway, I think it was, and another boy from the middle school chopped part of his braid off. And the only way he felt it was because his elastic came off. And once he got home and his mother pulled his hair out, they realized that there was a little chunk of his braid that was chopped out. So the boy's mom, Chantel Tallow, who's a friend of mine, shout out Chantel, she actually went and thought that, well, this could be a learning experience for the educators in Calgary. So she went and she proposed a school powwow to foster understanding between cultures, to which the school declined. The school board actually said they prefer something, now I'm quoting here, something low key. They didn't want attention to this boy getting his braids cut. Now I'm noticing you got braids, Marty. Do you have anything to say about this?
Those are assault charges, assault and battery for this kid to. You don't go cutting people's hair off. You know,
Right.
like the you. This is a real violation of this child.
So
for
not
this
not
to
just
happen.
not just cultural rights. You're
Yeah,
talking the law.
I'm talking. All right. First off, the law. We're in a society under the rule of law, and these are assault charges for that kid, and that will be dealt with in youth court. But the other part, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't. This is not legal advice. But the other part being that the next reality is that I remember reading the story. The kids were just saying that his hair is too long, and so they cut out. Like, this is imbued with racism. This is imbued with homophobia, toxic masculinity. There's a lot of avenues that are part of why this had happened.
Right.
And to foster something like, let's have an understanding between indigenous people and settlers. Let's start actually getting something going. That's exactly where it should happen, is in the schools, because those are the generations coming up. Those are the ones. It's our children who carry on what we give them. And so if we give them, so what the school is really saying is, if you're going to commit assault, just brush it under the rug, and low key we won't deal with it, and we'll just whatever, hush hush.
All they said,
that's a bad precedent to set. They should be, I think that they should be giving children more positive learning, more positive things to actually know and grow up, because kids are kids. They become the adults that we give them to be. What we make them is what they become.
Right. Yeah, and I don't. The school board actually not taking a stance on it. Well, that bothers me.
Mhm.
That bothers me because I believe Chantel's right. This is a great opportunity for people to, like, you're right. Like, you take the law into place, but like, what about our cultural heritage? Like, what about the braids? I understand that RCMP now are allowed to wear braids if they wanted. There's RCMP that are allowed to wear turbans now, right? This is part of our cultural heritage. Do you know any of the significance of the braids and why are people wear them?
Well, you know how bugs have antennas?
Oh yeah.
Our hairs are antenna,
Right.
and this is a symbol of power. It's
Hey.
not only a symbol of power, but your hair helps you connect to the universe.
Mm.
It's like your antenna if you were a bug. So to harm that, and it actually in the 1960s during Vietnam, they had a lot of problems with guerrilla warfare. So what they thought is, let's get a bunch of Apaches to go in there, and we'll train Apaches, and we'll train these natives. I don't think it was just Apaches. There's a few others that they said, we'll train them in military stuff so that they could go behind the lines. And so they had hunters, trackers go in there, and these guys had amazing skills. They could go into the bush, hide, survive for days. And they went out there and they were getting their basic training done. But in basic training, they cut their hair. And these guys lost, it's like they became discombobulated. And so after that, when they were training these guys, they realized to not cut their hair.
Yeah.
And so when they trained them in that sort of black ops stuff, they didn't cut their hair anymore.
Wow.
But that's like part of the symbol of power. Also, one of the reasons why we took scalps.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought
Which
that
was
a-
rare. That's a
Yeah.
total. There's a whole story going into that, but it's very complicated and not really your business right now. So.
So Chantel, Tallow out there, you got our support down here at TukkLive. We really feel for your boy Ralphie Vadnais. We have a video, actually there's a video out there that talks about the significance of braids as well. I'll post that on the TukkLive Facebook page. There is a great video that came out. This is making national news now, so it's not just a small middle school issue anymore. This ain't just kids messing around on the playground no more. It's actually a very deep, heavy issue, and we'd like our listeners out there to take it a little bit serious. All right, so we're gonna move on a little bit here. First off, we're gonna take a short break, and we're gonna play a little bit of music for you. And our guest will be showing up. I hope he's gonna be showing up on Facebook right now, and I'm gonna make sure that he shows up. So remember, you're listening to TukkLive on Jessfm.ca. Download that app. This is my counterpart, my accomplice, Marty Heavyhead. So we're going to play a track for you right here.